Information farmers and ranchers need to know. Adams on Agriculture. Now, back to Sabrina Hill.
Welcome back to AOA. We're going to talk about dairy products a little bit. The Danone Company had its 5th annual dairy forum in Philadelphia last week. We have the chance to talk on the phone with Danone Vice President of Milk Procurement, Steeve Yammine. I'd like to start off, Steve, with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do specifically for Danone.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the company for a little bit more than 17 years. I actually started as an intern in France, and my background is mainly operation, where I spent my first 5 years, and my last 12 years more in procurement. And today, since a little bit more than 4 years, I lead a North American team of milk sourcing, which basically sources all the milk in U.S. and Canada between our farmer network and our plants. So that's what I do nowadays.
And I know that there are a lot of brands under the main label. Can you tell us some of those?
Sure. In North America, we have many brands. On the yogurt side, we'll have Oikos, Activia, Light and Fit, Danimals. On the, I would say, other side of the business, which is the non-yogurt, we have the plant-based, like Silk brand, and then the coffee creamer business. We do have International Delight, and one more is big brand is on the organic milk called Horizon.
All right. You recently had the 5th annual Dairy Forum, which was held in Philadelphia, and that brought together dairy farmers and suppliers from basically from the East Coast to the West Coast. What would you say were some of the highlights from this forum?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That was our 5th annual forum, so it's our 5th time we're doing this. And the highlight is we had very big attendance this year, with more than 200 people, more than 100 dairy farmers from not only East Coast to West Coast, but also all the shades of gray of milk, between organic, non-GMO, conventional, even grass-fed farmers. We also had more than 20, 30 growers, and we had many suppliers attend, and obviously a lot of our executives. And the highlights were into 3, I would say, chapters. First one was more about connecting, and the second one about inspiring, and the third one about awarding. And one of the highlights, I would say, was an unfiltered Q&A between our CEO and our farmers without any filter. It was one of the biggest highlights during this session.
Okay, so I'll put you on the spot and see if you remember any of the questions from that. What type of things were the farmers interested in that session?
What type of questions in that session? They wanted to know what we are doing to innovate and create, I would say, demand, and how confident we feel in this market. So they're very interested to know about our pipeline of innovation. They were interested on our movement of soil health. They were very interested also on how we are managing this direct relationship, and we do have very specific model on how we pay our farmers called Cost Plus. They were very interested if we are rolling out those to organic farmers. So those are 2-3 topics that came up a lot during those sessions.
You know, I'm kind of touching on one of the first topics that you mentioned. The dairy industry just continues to face some hard times with, talks of oversupply of U.S. milk, and in some areas decreasing consumer demand for some things. What kind of trends are you noticing?
Well, the good news is we are in a market of yogurt, not all dairy. We have a lot of yogurt business, and we do have some fluid milk. And our fluid milk is in the value-added, I would say, category. So if you look more specifically in the dairy industry, we are in those markets where we see growth, and especially with the innovations we have. If you look at Activia shots, it's one of the biggest innovations in the dairy industry. So we are seeing trends more in the subcategory, like also cheese is doing. So even though there is a gloomy overall dairy industry decline, and the subcategories we are the ones that we are growing into. So this is very exciting for us and for our farmer partners to sell their milk to companies who are innovating.
And also, like you mentioned, consumer demands kind of changing a little bit over the last several years. Transparency has become a bit of a buzzword in the food industry. And I know that your company really prides itself on working with dairy farmers. How do you think working with dairy farmers contributes to that transparency?
Great question. We are a big believer of that piece, and actually we are pioneering in some of our sourcing model to have direct relationship with our farmers and have, I would say, no intermediate. We do have people where we have contracts directly with them. We know who is the farmer, who is his family. Our teams are on the ground with them anytime we want. We don't even have to give them notices. And we definitely, I would say, connect with them in a very different way that we used to connect in the past, and this is increasing more and more. We do have farmers who are willing to write, reports, some on their social media, on how they enjoy having that relationship with us. And that's very, very important in terms of transparency for consumers because they want to know where their milk is coming from. And if processors are connecting directly with farmers, it's a huge step in the transparency journey.
And I know that another thing, and I'm stealing a quote directly from some press information from the company. The company prides itself on source ingredients made with integrity. What does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is very related to what I described in terms of having direct relationship with farmers, but also pay them in a very different way in terms of very sustainable pay with true cost-plus model and having very transparent direct relationship. That's a big step for me in terms of integrity of the relationship between farmers and the ones who bring this milk in front of millions of consumers.
All right. Can you talk on the soil health initiative? Soil health, of course, very interesting to everybody. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the context of the pledge that we committed, I would say 2 years ago, was one pillar linked to sustainable agricultural practices. And in that, we defined that soil health is one of our main priorities in terms of investing in the soil, much more than what we invested all the industry the past 20 years on the seed. So we launched an initiative where we selected, I would say, 16 farmer partners through a pilot a little bit larger than 25,000 acres, around 300 fields around the entire United States, all the way from the east to the west coast. And we said, let's start with the baseline in terms of soil health to measure how healthy are your soils. And we did partner with big universities, Cornell University, Ohio State, to really define what is soil health and how do you measure this piece. And we started a year ago, I would say, and I'm happy to see the first results of that first baseline that are very promising. And you can see that really growers in this country are really focusing much more on the soil and improving practices. And our pilot shows that we have a great partnership with those growers that are starting to really change in terms of mindset and changing the way we invest into that soil.
Again, putting you on the spot, and we may have to look this up later, but for our listeners, our farmer listeners who are interested in finding out more about this, is there a website or someplace where they can go?
No, to be honest, we haven't created a website. We're being very humble into this because it's really baby step into a huge world of agriculture and a huge mindset change. But I'm happy to connect, as some of the farmers are interested, with people in my team to talk to them a little bit more in detail on what does it mean and what partnership we are doing and concretely how we are changing the practices in those chapters. So I'm happy to say also that if you want more information, farmers can go on our website, and there is a fact sheet, a little bit high level, on what we are doing, and you can find already some information through our website.
All right. And then the last thing that I wanted to ask you, We talked about several things going on in dairy and yogurt industries and farmers. If you could speak one-on-one with a farmer or a farming family, what is it that you would tell them?
If I want to speak one-on-one with a family farmer, definitely I will talk about their sustainability and their generational transfer and their long-term commitment. And I would convince them that partnering with Danone is a right step that they can take to make sure we keep in this country farmers farming. So, and the way I can explain it to them will be through the value added that we bring in our direct relationship and the way we reward those farmers for their long-term sustainability. So that will be my main chapter with them.
All right, Steve, that's everything I had for you, but is there any other comment that you would like to make?
No, I think we did touch base all around the spectrum here. I'm very happy that more and more, whatever the processors are doing nowadays to connect better with farmers is starting to be a lot more in the spotlight, and companies and journalists like you are exposing the great work that the companies are doing to connect better from fork to the plate of the consumer.
Danone Vice President of Milk Procurement, Steeve Yammine. This is AOA. I'm Sabrina Hill. We'll be back in just a moment.